It was so, and so I wrote it down in our book, and we could never find a way to get it into a song until Tuesday, okay? So this is how creativity works, and it is crazy.
This Tuesday, this past Tuesday.
Okay, so let's go. So,
Call them back. Oh, please don't call them back.
yes,
Just hit that side button and it'll turn on.
that's Barry.
All right, go ahead.
Hey Barry, can I call you right back?
He knows better.
Okay, he's excited about another idea. Okay,
good.
We live in a world of ideas. Okay, so we read this story 35 years ago. This whole book of stories. This is one of the stories. This wife, who is married to this guy who's called to be a preacher, and she is somewhere between the world and the, okay, you got the story, and she's trying to support him all she wants to. And so and they're required to go to chapel. So she's in the chapel, and here's this high-powered preacher up there saying, "You went out of debt." So these kids are committing to all kinds of things, okay, to help get this thing out of debt. It got the place out of debt, and they're fantastic at what's going on. But the individual stories. So here's Charlie saying, "Yeah, I got $1,000." And they did have, $1,000 saved up. And in the book, they even used, she said, "Oh, crap."
Yeah.
Because she went home and she was mad.
She was livid.
So, and he got this little baby. By the time he gets home,
She packed up the baby and gone.
no, please, honey, please let me tell the story. Please let me tell the story. There was a note. I'm gone. Okay. No. No, he comes home.
You were so popular.
He comes home. See, most of the time you can get me. Hey, I got to call back, Jerry, whoever it is. Okay, I got to call back. You hear me? Tell him I need to talk to him in 30 minutes, but I'll get back to him, okay? I can't remember all the details of the story, but she comes home and he does have the baby. And she says to him, "I'm out of here," and she leaves, okay? So it tells, and this girl is a fantastic writer, it tells the story about her on Interstate 40 in Kansas, going by these places, and she is mad all the way, all what's going through her head, and he's at home. She doesn't know what's going on with the baby, okay? So she finally gets a motel, and she gets up in the next morning, she cleans up, she looks at her face, and it's one of those God moments, and she says, and there's probably more involved even in that story than that, but she said there's several other things and instances that got them to the place where she just simply said, "I can't go through with all this stuff." She gets in the car and she drives back. And when she drives back, and it's like springtime, and it's hot and humid, and he is there asleep on the couch with the baby on his stomach, on his bare stomach. And she looks in there and she says, "What a good man." He's totally at peace. I mean, with what he thought God wanted him to do. Now there's even more details, and if we could find a copy of that book, but every story was like. But when she looked in that mirror, she said, it was a God moment where she just simply says, to find a man like this dedicated, this and that. But the end of every chapter was this phrase: "And my Red Sea parted, and I walked on through." Like bondage. I mean, goodbye Egypt. the Red Sea parted.
My Red Sea
My
parted.
Red Sea parted. And
Right.
every story was like somebody in
Had a
bondage.
breakthrough.
Yeah.
They had a breakthrough and they went
And
through.
they got Pharaoh behind them and.
Yeah, exactly.
So for years, now the story is better told than that.
She's
And
amazing writer.
and maybe all the details were, but
But
that's.
it all came from the giving of that.
And now
student
you've
body.
written a song?
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so,
Come on
Does
in.
anybody need refills on tea?
Oh, I'm
Well,
fine,
good.
thank you.
Can I get that plate out of your way, Ann, or are you still working on it?
Thank you.
so,
Thank you.
Thank
so, I wanted to do a project where I wasn't fast forwarding, and most of the stuff I fast forward through are slow, intense songs. And with the vocal band, the voices are just too intense. I mean, they're just pushing it. And you know what? I need only one of those moments, two of those moments a night. I need them at the end of the first half and at the very end of the concerts. Otherwise, I just want to talk to people, okay?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Okay,
yeah.
so I wanted to do a project that rhythmically, the whole thing was moving along the whole time. So we got something like, you know, I'm gonna love like I'm leaving, give more than I'm receiving, gonna laugh until it takes it's your story, breath away. I'm gonna say what needs saying, pray what needs praying. I'm gonna love like I'm leaving here today. You know, I mean, it's like just live each day to its fullest. And it's, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know, and we're doing a lot of traditional,
But all up tempo.
huh?
Up tempo mainly.
But all upcoming. I wanna dig a little deeper in his. I wanna walk a little more.
You're
like
gonna, you know what? You may find out this will be a big.
like Jesus would. And the only new thing we wrote was a song we wrote with Donnie Reed the other day. Better together, dun, dun, dun. Stronger each day, better together in every way. Different people, so much the same. Da 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 da. Divided we fall, united we stand. Better together. But it's everything's driving better together. So everything's driving everything. So we're doing this old black spiritual that we love. Our brother Moses spoke the water, and the children all passed over. Our brother Moses spoke the water, and the seas gave away. Our brother Moses spoke the water, and the children, ain't you glad that the dun dun army? Children, ain't you glad that the sea give away? Oh, our brother Moses spoke the water, and the children all passed over. Our brother Moses. And so we said, let's do a band. What are we gonna do with the band? And I had to think 35 years ago.
Wow.
My Red Sea parted and I walked on through. My Red Sea parted and I walked on through.
Wow.
My Red Sea parted. No, no more bondage. Or there's a better phrasing. No more bondage. No more bondage. My Red Sea parted and I walked on through.
And that's gonna be.
My brother Moses smoked the water and the
Wow.
So you added that to our already written song, yeah. PDF.
It's an old
PD?
song, yeah, no black.
An OP.
Yeah, cool.
That's really cool.
And you get new copyright. Well, why not?
When
My
are we
Red-
gonna
You wrote
change
it. You wrote it.
But the idea is to apply the metaphor.
Yeah.
The Bible is a metaphor.
Absolutely.
And the metaphor is get out of bondage, get out of bitterness, get out of hatred, get out of jealousy, get out of it, you know,
Get out of
get,
Get out of cynicism.
get out of
Yes,
cynicism.
yes.
I-
Isn't that the biggest cancer? And some people think that's humor. It's not, it's cancer. Cynicism is the
Yeah.
worst.
It is.
You know, if I'm dreaming, don't wake me. This is too good.
Yeah.
It's too good.
Isn't that the
It's
truth?
It's
Good
too
God,
good.
bad God, and no God. If he's good, we're in. Like Flynn, if there's no God, I've enjoyed the trip. If we get there, he's got a towel on his head, we're all going to hell anyway. So either way, I'd rather spend eternity to hell than with a God that has a towel on his head and doesn't love me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would be hell to
Yeah.
be in heaven with a God who doesn't love you?
Paul went to Singapore with this rock band a few weeks ago. And he didn't know anything about the guys. He didn't know much about their music when he went with them. And they were a big band. Well, they're still a big band. But the lead singer, he found out, was he was very spiritual, but not a Christian guy. And Paul's just really open about it, that he's
Right.
a believer and that God is important to him.
Right.
And so when things would come up in conversation, Paul just, our verbiage is just different when you're around Christian people. We say things from a different angle.
Right.
And he would say things that the guy, by the end of the trip, he really avoided Paul.
Yeah.
And he said it's just a spiritual wall was there. And the guy asked him towards the end of the trip, he said, so you really, really believe this stuff? And Paul's like, absolutely. And he said, all he said was, well, good for you. And I thought, it was so odd for him to just be so matter of fact about, I'm glad it works for you.
Yeah.
But he said that when he first met him, he said there was something odd about him. But it was like, whatever was in him was not happy with what was in Paul.
Now, this is a member of his group?
It's the lead singer of Vertical Horizon, the rock band.
Okay. That they were just temporarily together?
Mhm, yeah,
Oh, that's too
everybody's
bad,
got good
because
together.
after a few more trips, he could win him.
Well, Paul said it was
Yeah.
just so, and Paul said it was, at first it was annoying. He said, because I thought the guy didn't like me. He said, and I'm a likable person.
Right.
Everybody likes me.
Right.
And he said it was annoying. He said, but when he realized it was a spiritual thing, he said it almost made me it gave me peace that God was so evident in my life
Isn't that great?
that the godlessness in him made him very uncomfortable.
And also probably was very attractive.
Yeah.
If he could say good for you, he
Right.
probably meant it.
He said it was the most bizarre thing to be around somebody that avoided you.
Well, I
because
think
you were
if you
spiritual.
present the real Jesus, you don't have to preach hard.
Right.
Well, Gloria,
He's very attractive.
Yes.
He is.
Gloria's big kick these days, and it's a good kick. Maybe not just these days, but she had an interview with T.N. Wright this morning.
Yes, I
NT Wright,
know.
yeah.
And I envy her.
Can you believe it? But the whole business about salt and yeast,
Yeah.
that's the business of worrying.
Absolutely.
I mean, just shut up and be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Well,
all we
more
got.
and more, we're gonna, first of all, we got it, we're talking about, it does matter what you believe.
Yes.
And the us, them, heaven's out there and earth's down here and God hates this and, that's gotta go because it's not true, first of all. The resurrection is a power. The good news is life has come
Wow.
and it is powerful. So the question, that I
Yeah.
sent out to the magazine is, how did the resurrection break through to you?
Wow.
Because it was already out here. So
Wow.
when did it break through your crust?
Yeah.
Wow.
And one of the things he compares is it was like too often the power and the energy and the heat and the fire and the light of the resurrection when it becomes how did I think it was Richard Rohr said often that is like a volcano, and as it cools into Ecclesiastica,
Wow.
Interesting.
it becomes this rock.
Yeah.
And until something pokes a hole and lets the pressure out again, that spews out. So
Wow.
so who poked the hole for you? Where did because the energy was.
Oh, gosh.
was under
See, I
there.
understand the question now. When I
Yeah.
got the email, I didn't totally understand that question. But you know what I'd say now? The Grace Awakening was
Yeah,
one of
but
those moments.
Right.
the resurrection is out here. Okay, so fast forward to what he's saying. I think once we get that it isn't us and them, once we get that we are embedded in the culture, we are embedded. It's not the church and the world, because if it is, it's not the church.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because everybody says, well, church membership is coming down. The evangelical church is dying. Well, first of all, what is the evangelical church? Another question, which I asked last week. But I'm saying, okay, if it is truly the energy of Christ's resurrection in us, then we're embedded in the culture. And all the metaphors that I can find in the New Testament are salt, light,
Lemon.
yeast.
Yeah.
Loving, yeah.
Okay,
I
that's
love
not
those
us and
lights out there
them.
with those
Right.
lights.
It is this tiny little, how
You
much
are a
yeast? A
part of-
teaspoon? Teaspoon of yeast.
A mustard seed.
A teaspoon of yeast in a loaf of bread. Okay, find the yeast. But it changes the loaf. Okay, when I hear these statistics about there aren't any more Christians out here because, church membership is down, I said, well, good.
It makes the,
Yeah, exactly. I
it makes the
agree.
loaf edible.
Well, not only edible, you can eat rock if you want to.
Yeah, but,
It changes the loaf.
right.
It's not
Yeah.
about the taste, it is about the phenomenon. Salt. And no wonder Jesus said, if the salt turns into sand, what good is it? It's gotta stay salt.
Yeah.
But it isn't salt saying, I'm salt and you're not.
Right. It adds to what's already there.
And so,
Hey,
Interesting.
let me give you an example. She has a niece that I was a student of mine when I taught school.
Yeah.
I loved her then. She loved me. We've had a bond
She
on
still loves you.
on the mercy. She was a little doll.
there's a spark.
And so Marcy's just discovered this, not just, but as she's grown older now, she's realizing this is a
This
jewel.
is a real deal.
Yeah, right.
And her mother and father are both dead, right? Yeah, okay.
And our-
And so she's very, very close to her. So she has her down there. She's been very successful. She got a very nice place in Sarasota. She goes down. So she,
And she goes with her to this swanky restaurant.
yeah.
It's a bar.
And so Ann goes out with her with all of her friends.
Friends,
And, they're drinking and everything. And Ann comes back and says, "I've sat beside this interesting guy. Evidently, he must really be somebody. He's been an entertainer, and so she kept talking." But this guy said at the end of the night, said it was just he and I. They're talking to a bunch of people, but he wouldn't know about spiritual things. Totally.
He looked across the table and
You tell
he
us.
came in for dinner. Well, these friends.
Uh-huh.
I'm out of my comfort zone in many
You're at a
ways.
club
when
or something.
Yeah, and we were sitting there, and the doorbell rang, and Larry went to the door, and he said, "Come on in, Dick." And so Ellen said, "Why don't you sit down and have a meal with us?" Well, in the dinner, he looked across the table at me, and he says, "There's something very peaceful about you. Where does it come from?"
Oh, wow.
And
I love that.
I do too.
so I had
Thought
no
you'd
clue.
never ask.
But he had controlled the conversation around the table, and he was quite funny. But anyway, so he got up and walked around the table and came over there, and we had this conversation. But after he left, they told me his name when he came in, but it didn't mean anything to me. His name was Dick Smothers, and I'd never heard
Oh my gosh.
I'd never heard of Dick Smothers in my life.
Unbelievable.
Well, I was in Japan.
She was doing
I mean,
missionary
Dick
work.
Smothers was not in
She'd
Japan.
go over there to Buddhist, having fellowship with the Buddhist priest.
That's right. But I had no idea.
And that's a friend of your niece's? Dick Smith?
Well,
Yeah, she's
yeah,
in that
he's
in that circle.
he's in that circle, and so I was just fascinated. He told me he's been sober for 20 years. So he showed me his phone, how many years and months and days. So I want to know the rest of his story because obviously there's a lot of pain that's been a part of his life. So I hope in one of my visits, I emailed him the time before last when I was down there, but he was out of town. So
How
I really want to hear his
fascinating.
story.
I
Yes.
would love to sit there with you and hear it.
Tell Bill about the email you got or text you got from the woman.
Oh, the woman who
You're the woman
her
she told
husband
you
was the
about.
first black CEO
CEO
of a
of
Fortune 500 company.
500. She's sitting there at the bar with her.
She sent me an email for my birthday last week,
Wow.
and she said several decades ago God created a person, and she went on to talk how she views me and what I have
This
meant
is their
in her
third
life.
encounter with this woman.
And she invited me up to the condo, and we had an hour and a half of intense, wonderful conversation. Not about trying to convince her about any theology or
Right.
anything
Right.
like that, but about life. And I'm not so interested about knowing more theology these days. I'm interested in making real what I already know.
Yeah.
You tell Bill what you said about your wish for right now is that you be where your body is, or what is what you say?
Oh, my theme? Oh, to show up where my body is.
That's her. Every year she has a theme.
Every year I
For the
have a
whole
theme.
year, and this is your
And this
theme
year is to show up with
And
my
one
body.
of-
Be present.
And one of the hardest things I've ever had was to enter another person's space without an agenda.
Wow.
If I enter your space to change you or to convince you, you put up a wall.
Yep.
I put up a wall.
Mhm.
If I enter your space to know you and to love you, for the first time, real dialogue begins to happen.
Anna said this wonderful thing. It was one of your decades things, but you said God showed you that to pray in your head, pray whenever you meet anybody.
Yeah.
Show me what you had in mind when you created them, and help me treat them as if that's already happened.
It's when you just pass somebody on the street, you see them coming. I did a little experiment in the mall. I'd go sit down on the bench in the mall, and I'd see somebody coming toward me, and I'd focus on them. Just say, God, I don't know that person, but just help them to know how loved they are.
I'm hunting your bus driver.
Right here.
Can you please move the bus so I can get a semi in, please?
Okay.
Just help them to.
Yeah, you don't want to be
All
run
right
over by
with you, I don't
someone.
care.
You don't want to be run over by
No,
someone.
no,
What will often happen is
How are
they'll
you?
I'm good,
They'll
how are you?
come back by, and I just focus. I don't say a word. I smile, but I don't say anything. I just smile at them, and they'll come back by. And I have had people come and sit down on the bench beside me and tell me their whole life story.
I know. But
How cool.
I'm trying to lose all of
But
my resources too.
we don't have many listeners in this world, and we all need somebody to listen to us.
That's great.
That's cool. But try entering another person's space without an agenda.
You know?
It's hard. It is very.
But you know, I bet it gets easier the more you do it. Wouldn't you think?
Like
Oh, yeah.
anything.
Because when I gave up, when I gave up hell, I mean, really let that be the focal point of a conversation I have when I'm trying to witness to somebody.
Yeah.
We'd always start off with, if you were to die today, do you know where you'd spend eternity?
Yeah.
Well, that's not a very comforting, but that's what we were taught, right?
Yes.
That's what we were taught.
And so,
So was I.
Yeah.
and so when I learned to give all that up and just say, I just really want to hear your story. And if you
know,
never, I
with
told my
my-
mother, I said, Mama, you have preached at Aunt Pat and Uncle Gene all my life, and they still don't believe.
Yeah.
Why don't you just love them? Love them all the way to hell if that's where they choose to go.
Yeah.
Our job isn't to save them, it's to love them.
Yeah.
With my Buddhist friends, I often would say, tell me the most beautiful teachings you know of in Buddhism. There's some beautiful teachings in Buddhism.
Yes.
And they're very biblical, really. And then I say, are you able to make that active in your life? I never had one say yes. I said, well, let me tell you about a person who will come and journey with you and help you to make that active in your life. And then they're interested in, well, who is this person,
Yeah.
And then he's the
Right.
spirit that comes and dwells with you. But that's the opening line rather than,
Right.
Well, it's
I mean, that's
the
all we
other,
need.
The other religion is almost like the law. It's all there to remind us we can't do
for
it
me,
by ourselves.
for me, the major difference between other religions and the Christian faith, other religions call for commitment to a teaching. We call for commitment to a relationship, to a person.
Yeah.
For instance, the Bible is not my God.
Right.
It's important to me because it tells me about Jesus.
Yeah.
But the relationship is what it's all about.
Exactly. Even the
Yeah.
Bible says of Jesus, he's the Word of God,
Yeah.
not the Bible.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm gonna go read for Nick. What do you want me to tell him from you?
You know what she does? One of my dearest old friends. She's a much better friend than I am. is a retired president. And she reads to him every Thursday at a certain time because he can't see anymore.
He can't even see letters that high.
Yeah.
It's just-
And I said, see what I want you to say to Nick from me.
Because he loves you so much.
I know he does.
And
And
just to get a word from you, I say, I just sat at the table with Bill, and this is what he wanted me to tell you.
And he was one of my, and this, I'm glad you asked me that. He was one of my first connectors of head and heart.
Wow.
That's huge.
'Cause
That's huge.
It is huge.
That is huge, Bill. Oh, so many people live in the head and so many people live in the heart. They never connect the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, explain it.
I grew up in all heart, no head. It was just all heart. And you know what? They
I'd
were
rather
hap-
be there than if I had to choose.
They were halfway
would too.
right. But boy, when I finally found that good sense and good reason, because a lot of the heart would tell them to do stuff that they would say, God told me to do
Irrational,
that,
yeah.
and it was so irrational. Nick was one of the first persons, and I respected his mental thought process so much. And he also was the director of the chorale. And I will never forget, and I respect his ability to know great classical music. And I never saw him shed tears, that kind of thing. But he could handle emotion in his hands with the choir like nobody could handle emotion. But boy, when it dawned on me, what I wanted to do the rest of my life was one year we were getting ready to leave for the choir recital, and most of the stuff was classical stuff like the heavens are telling the glory of God, all that kind of serious stuff. But before we left, they got on that 2-week trip down through the South. He said, let's all get in a circle around and join hands. Join hands. Sing with me. And we did a cappella. Just as I am, this one verse. Thy love, not the first verse. Thy love unknown has broken every barrier down. Now that harmony between thine, yea, thine alone, O Lamb of God, I come, I come. So you tell him that Nick was the first one who introduced me to head and heart are not antitheses.
I not
They're
only
not
will make
empty.
his day, you not only will make his day, you will make the rest of his life. I will share that with such delight and joy.
Another thing you can tell him, says Brendan, I'll never get the morning I went to the altar during Park Place is pretty formal, where I'll have my memorial service, but they still have an open altar. And we were in the middle of the Benji thing when he was 15, 16, and it was pure hell in our house,
Yeah.
pure hell. And I went up there to pray. First, I felt a hand on my shoulder.
It was Nick.
Huh.
Tell him those two things.
I'll tell him.
I want to tell you one more thing Ann said before, because you guys haven't heard this. One of her decade things, and this has deeply affected me. It changed a lot of impetus. And she said she asked the Lord to help her live with expectation and not expectancy, not
And
expectations.
you
And
heard her say that on the road.
I've written this in the
Yeah.
magazine. Because if you live with expectations,
Oh my
you will
gosh,
always be
Disappointed.
disappointed.
Wow.
If you live with expectancy, there's your
Oh,
interruptions. You
brilliant.
say, What are you gonna do
Gosh,
today?
I'm
exactly.
gonna put that on my website and
that
give you
is
credit.
that change of thought.
oh my God.
I'm
What I
quoting that
do.
today.
In big things and small
Did you get a
things.
picture of her?
I will.
I believe there are blessings circling around over our heads all the time, looking for a place to land, but they can't find a place because our lives are so filled with expectations.
And that's interruptions.
My gosh, you're
God's
brilliant.
will, you're
I
right,
know it.
is the interruptions.
Yeah.
Let me
Does
tell
it take 91 years to get this?
Let me tell you, when I first started talking about that, how many years ago did music style start changing? From
Every
the organ
year.
and the choir. How many years ago?
From the organ and the choir, gosh, 30, 40,
Well, anyway, whenever,
20 years ago?
well, let's say 20 years ago.
Okay,
I love the organ, I love the choir.
yeah.
And I would go to church on Sunday and things were changing.
Right.
And I would come away sort of disappointed.
Right.
And so it got to the place where I really didn't look forward to going to church on Sunday morning. I said, God, what's going on inside of me? And what I discovered was I was going to church with expectations.
Yeah.
And so when those expectations were not met, I was disappointed. So I said, well, does that mean God didn't show up? Didn't mean that at all. It just meant I couldn't see him. I
You
couldn't
didn't show
feel
up.
him. I didn't show up. That's
Yeah.
right. So I made a conscious effort. I
Wow.
made a decision. I said, God, from now on, I will enter the doors of the sanctuary with expectancy. I'll give you all the wiggle room you need. You can do you can do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
And I discovered that, there's beauty in so many different things that but my expectations
Yeah.
were.
And you weren't
were
used
getting-
to them. They weren't
and they
comfortable.
were getting in the way. So for a while, when they'd start singing something that just really did not resonate with me, I'd pick out somebody who was really being blessed. That's it. And I
Yeah.
can't believe that I've said the same
Yes,
thing.
He's
Yeah.
evidently speaking
They
for
heard me
him.
say the same thing.
Exactly.
Because I'm
Get
sorry, I don't want to
closer to
interrupt
everybody.
you, but hold your thought. I've told all them, and I said it on stage, I used to show up at my church when the music was over.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to hear all that bad theology and bad singing and bad rhyming.
In bed.
And finally I started watching the young people and they were getting it. Like you just said. Okay, finish. I just cannot believe it. It just confirmed.
So I started thinking about that, and so now I am pretty much convinced that in our culture, most of us live in relationship to our expectations rather than in relationship to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, just accepting what happens
And
or
expectations
welcoming it.
Expectations make you blind.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They really make you blind.
So lower your.
It's like that woman in our
Okay.
church that said, I used to hate this praise and worship
know.
music
3 weeks.
until my
Yeah.
15-year-old grandson
It's just
started
stuff
playing
you
the
use.
drums in the worship band.
Yeah. So
I kind of got like that praise and worship music, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's that
The Gene
15-year-old.
McDonald's mother said, I hated that praise and worship stuff until I went to my grandson started playing the worship band. I'm kind of getting like that a little bit.
So you have no expectations now?
I find that for relationships, to approach a relationship with expectation, parents can do great damage to their children with
Absolutely.
expectations. If I have an expectation of you, Mark, and I don't know you, I'm getting to know you, but if I have an expectation of you and I bring that to this relationship, that expectation may not be met, and if it's not, I don't see all the beauty and the wonder and the awe of you because that one expectation is not met. And I find that it's true with every person I meet. If I go into this with an it's like that old thing, you put up a big old white sheet of paper and you put a black dot in the middle. What does everybody see? I see a black dot. Nobody ever says I see a lot of white paper. But when I look at people, I want to see all this white paper.
Right.
I don't want to see just the black dot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So expectations are so damaging for me. I don't know about anybody else.
Let's
but
see how kind he is for me.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's a kind way to teach.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
Lower your expectations and
No.
try to
No.
obliterate
Lower
them.
them.
Get rid of them.
Just
Change
don't-
them to expectancy.
to change it to expectancy.
Expectancy.
Yeah, there's a world of difference between
If you
the two.
lower them, you still have expectations, but you're
Right.
being condescending and saying, well,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
lower them for you.
It's
But
almost
it's-
like the hope of things not seen.
Well, lowering them is a good step in the right direction. You can't totally obliterate them.
Well, and you're not gonna jump from here to here.
Right,
Uh,
right.
Maybe you need to
Process.
raise them.
For yourself, I definitely believe that, but not for
Well,
other people.
well-
That's the idea. I mean, shouldn't you have high expectations? I mean, shouldn't you say, like Bill told me one day, he said, I'm not competing with anyone but myself.
No.
He's not competing with other groups. That's why I always loved being in the vocal band, and I never was in any group. I'd heard horror stories
Right.
of the days when groups would mess with each other's sound systems and they're in competition. I've never once walked on that stage from the beginning to the day I left feeling like I'm in competition with anybody.
Community can never be built as long as we compare and compete.
There's another brilliant statement.
You just can't, you can't build
And
community.
that's true of your kids too, it's true of your friends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, well,
Community can never be built as long as we compare and compete.
and compete.
You know that, and it's all
But it's
seeds.
true, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It is very true.
I forwarded her the other day my business about everybody is saying politically now, our strength is in our diversity. And I want not that because, you know, Mexican food and all our ethnic. But more important than that,
Better together.
we're better together.
Oh, honey, I was going to tell you, I wish you had been in the cab the other day. I was in the cab with this guy from Germany, and we were both going to the airport to leave at the same time. The cab driver was from Greece. And so we had this conversation about the immigrants coming into both Germany and
Greece.
And Greece is overrun, and they were already,
Going
About bankrupt.
their economy was bankrupt. And Germany's mad because they got to bail out Greece.
Yeah.
Because they've been, so I've got these three people in here.
better together. Yeah.
But the guy said, you know, there's a difference in America, the Greek guy, because he's American now, I mean, he's here. He said, America really welcomes you. And he said, they don't want you to lose your background, but they want you to be American. And he's trying to explain this, and to the German guy who was sitting here. And so I said, yeah, I'm Irish. I mean, he's German. We're all, the beauty of it is that is American. He said, I cannot communicate this to my friends in Greece
Wow.
because they're homogenous.
They live parallel lives.
And so he said that very word. He said, we have parallel societies, and he said, we are afraid because we know that the Syrians are not going to become Greeks.
Right.
But in America, we don't want them to lose their background. He said, everybody
Well,
loves...
we do want them to become American.
Yeah, as he said that, he said, I can't explain to them that in America,
You get to keep your
the
identity.
joy of this big, I said, well, that's why we call us a melting pot. And he said, yeah, and the joy of that is that they want us to keep our ethnicity, but be a part of being American. And he said, they just don't get it. He said, they just cannot get it because everybody in Germany is German. Everybody in Greece is Greece. And they are afraid that if they lose being Greek, they disappear. And I cannot make them understand that you become bigger in America for being Greek.
Wow.
I understand.
I was like, I thought you'd love that.
I
Because
understand some of that feeling. When we first went to Japan, I felt like I was losing my identity. The language was different, the food was different, everything was different, everything. And there was nothing that,
Especially from Decatur, Alabama.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you go through a stage where anything that smacks of home, you clutch.
Wow.
You just
Hang
really,
on.
really clutch. Then if you really are serious about being there, then you sort of angry at your parents for not having you born Japanese because you want so much. And so most people go through 3 different stages. The first stage is anything that.
Homesickness.
Yeah, well,
I think.
it's more than homesickness. It's you feel like you're losing your identity, so you're clutching your identity. The second stage is you want to be like everybody else, and so you out Japanese the Japanese.
So you lose your identity.
Yeah, you lose your identity. So you don't build real strong relationships in this first stage because there's that barrier. The second stage, you out Japanese the Japanese, and so they reject that.
Yeah.
You don't. It's only when you move over there and you say, I just want to be real. I just want to be real. And then you form these relationships that are lifelong. But what I'm trying to figure out, how do we, for instance, if we bring in a group of Chinese students to the Anderson University campus, which there's talk of that, and diversity in and of itself just creates a lot of problems.
Walls.
It's walls, it's all kinds of things that it creates. So how do you find the touch point? Well, there are a lot of husbands and wives who live under the same roof, who live parallel lives. There's no touch points at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So parallel lives is very common.
Right.
But where do we, if we bring in these students, what are the touch points that we can start with, that we are consciously making those touch points so we are not living
To
parallel
create
lives?
community.
Yeah, to
Right.
create community.
Well, the first thing is Christ. I mean,
Yeah.
Are they Christian kids?
yeah.
No,
No?
we're not talking about Christian kids. We're
Okay.
talking about Chinese.
Because the same thing happens in marriage. If there are parallel lives, if there's a commitment, one of the things held us together in our marriage at times when we really have been,
Yeah.
is there's a bigger commitment here we've made.
Well,
Yeah, and I don't think it can happen without that.
I don't
Well,
think it can happen without it.
Well, I don't think anything can happen. I think most of us in our culture, we live with attachments, not commitments.
Well, and attachments are the prerequisite for addictions.
Oh, absolutely. But I think a lot of people live their whole lives with just well, like church people, you know. It's not going quite the way I wanted to go, so I'll just go to the church. And after a while, you go to another church, you go to another
and
church.
back to marriages, there's so many attachments because the person is not whole by himself. So he thinks or she
So he
thinks
thinks that
this
somebody
is
else
going
is
to
gonna
make me
make me
whole,
it.
and it becomes
Because
an
that's
attachment,
right.
which is a psychological.
And then when you discover it doesn't, you just
then they
make
get
a new
married in the
attachment. You just
attachment
make a new
stage.
attachment.
Yeah.
I gotta go. Nick's waiting for
Oh,
me.
okay.
Well, you remember when Benji told you he's leaving and you said, Benji, you can't, but you told all, you had a whole story with
Let me get
Benji
my handbag here.
about-
It's back here in the corner.
Just because you
somewhere.
get mad don't mean you leave and you walk out.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That you said there was something Benji was gonna
I forget it.
leave. It was really good. Okay, I'm gonna stop my recording now.
Thank you for sharing that, giving me that.
Well, I
To
could.
take for Nick to
Tell
take.
Nick we said hi.
You tell him I could make that list another 10